there's your problem. There we go. Someone put a red cube in here. Yeah, that'll happen. Gotta get one of the green cubes. That's it. That's basically the whole game. Okay, it's really not that bad. In fact, I rather like First Martians, although admitting my stance is not shared by many others. In fact, there has been significant blowback behind First Martians, mostly due to perplexing rules and the use of app implementation. Whoops! Initially, I was apprehensive to try the game based on these factors, but I'm willing to take up the challenge. So let's learn how to play First Martians. What? Seriously, what the? Okay, so maybe we won't learn First Martians just yet. Because despite every review evaluating First Martians within a bubble, on its own, without context, they ignore how similar the game is to another more popular game made by the same designer, a game considered much easier to play. Robinson Crusoe. The advice by the consensus claims that by using this game as a roadmap, First Martians becomes much easier to learn. So, let's see and learn Robinson Crusoe and how well it leads us into First Martians. All right.
Hi, welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the wonderful player game First Martians Adventure.
A game of Robinson Crusoe begins with selecting the mission and establishing the board. Deal out the 9 mandatory unbuilt invention cards along with 5 random ones. Place the adventure cards and matching dice. Select characters and give each their complementary unbuilt invention, as well as their 2 action tokens. The group also receives 2 randomized scavenged items, and place the starting region tile. Each round starts with event cards, which you build by dealing out an equal number of adventure and story cards to a maximum of the number of rounds the mission contains. There are also tokens representing resources and the status of your shelter. At the start of most games, you won't have said shelter, so these values are all set at 0. The point of the game is to not only survive, which is itself a challenge, but also to complete the mission, whether it be creating a signal fire or planting crosses or filming a movie. The board, appearing initially confusing, is laid out straightforward, with each round involving steps, tracked by a token on the upper left-hand side of the board. Only when reaching halfway down to the action step does gameplay move from left to right across the bottom of the board. At the top, reveal the event. If there's an event already at the bottom, that card gets shifted left. If shifted off the board, there may be consequences to suffer. The next stage of morale is where the current player gains determination tokens based on the current morale, potentially losing tokens if the current value is negative. Anytime a character is required to discard something but can't, he or she suffers a wound. The game then moves into production. The tile where your camp sits gathers resources of each type listed. Later in the game, this can be expanded to adjacent tiles depending on built inventions. There are 2 types of resources: perishable, which are discarded at the end of the round, and non-perishable, which are persistent. These are represented by bananas and bread, respectively, despite bread being perishable and bananas having a shelf life of up to a week. But let's not look too much into that. For one, when you gather food, regardless if it's fish or bird, you gain...
Banana.
Yes, a banana. When you kill a beast in a hunt, and let's just point out that most of the beasts appear to be apex predators, not sure how that works on this island, you also gain...
Banana?
Yes, banana. This is certainly a bizarre island, probably holding back a malevolent force that would destroy the world if released, so be on the lookout for smoke monsters, plane wrecks, cursed numbers, and unsatisfying narrative conclusions. And banana birds. The action phase is where most of the game resides. Players place 2 of their action tokens anywhere on the board. The number of options is plentiful, between 15 and 45 different places to commit actions to. Obviously, you'll never be able to accomplish them all. Will you satisfy an event, go hunting, explore, gather, or build either the shelter, the roof, palisades, or any number of the inventions unlocked? Perhaps you'll boost morale, or heal oneself. Placing 2 tokens atop one another, regardless of the combination of characters, guarantees success. Placing 1 forces the corresponding roll from matching colored dice. And yes, these are all different. All the action tokens must be placed before resolution, when dice are rolled and rewards reaped. The chance of success with these dice is high, but even if you fail, you'll receive 2 determination tokens that can be used to activate various character skills. The other 2 dice may come up with an adventure and/or result in the character suffering a wound. And by the way, these adventures, I wouldn't really call them adventures, more like possible storm, a viper bite, or a chance of gangrene. Adventures are only called that after the fact to those that survived in order to stave off PTSD. We refer to Jurassic World as an adventure, but I'm sure all the dead tourists had differing views on that. Some adventures feature one-time effects, but others may result in placing the card into the event deck, potentially bringing it back up later in the game to offer consequences. After resolution, transfer acquired resources from that round down to be available, and each character takes a portion of food. And obviously, you better like bananas. Each character that doesn't eat loses a wound. Finally, depending on the turn, any number of weather and threat dice are rolled. If characters are not protected enough, you guessed it, they suffer wounds. Rounds continue until the mission objectives are met, or the players lose the game, either by running out the clock, or if one character is killed. The perplexing rules notwithstanding, Robinson Crusoe is not a difficult game to learn. It's all about risk assessment. How badly do you need to succeed at a task? There's no route to a victory that involves playing it safe. Right from the inset, characters should avoid double stacking an action. Only when necessary should one stack to assure success. Additionally, the shelter is paramount. Get that high enough, and much of the rest of the game becomes easier. Once my group figured the rules, Robinson Crusoe quickly became one of our most popular cooperative games.
Which brings us back to First Martians, a game with nearly identical mechanics, though not appearing initially so. But to explain that, we need to address the elephant in the room, the app.
The app. I was initially apprehensive about this, and the few times I heard of games implementing the idea, my feelings were mixed. If I'm constantly inputting information into an app, why don't I just play an app? However, after completing my first playthrough of First Martians, I began to realize what the app was actually offering. The issue with Robinson Crusoe, and it's admittedly an insignificant one, are these event and adventure cards. This is a game about survival, so it's strangely odd characters on this island possess the precognition to know the consequences of their actions. Unless, of course, you know, Smoke Monster, Falling Planes, Dharma Initiative, and frustrating unanswered questions. My god, that show was annoying. Some players have gotten to cover up portions of the adventure card when revealed to keep the consequences secret, though this is obviously homebrewed. However, that doesn't alter the fact that players will know a consequence is due when its color appears on the event deck. Even shrewd shufflers can ensure they remain deep in the deck until so late in the game as to make their re-emergence insignificant. I wouldn't call this a flaw, more just a minor issue the game wouldn't absolve, or couldn't absolve, without a more complicated system to prevent a card's consequence from being known. Ignoring whether this deserves the overused elegant moniker, app integration was the solution ultimately embraced. And that's really it. First Martians places the missions, the event, and the adventure cards into the app, removing their inclusion as cards in an already inundated board. The dice are still present, and we now see there are 4 instead of 5, adding research onto the board along with the explore, build, and gather. We can start to see already that this game is close to being, well, Robinson Crusoe on Mars. which is, yes, an actual movie from 1964 that starred Adam West and a monkey and stole models from War of the Worlds and contained a scene where a man eats an underwater plant sausage. But I digress. The similarities don't end with the adventure decks. Each character gains 2 action tokens as before. If playing with less than 4 players, they unlock the ability to use these robot assistants, just as you had access to Friday and the dog in Crusoe. Action order proceeds on the top left, then when reaching the action phase, moves left to right across the working block. As before, 2 tokens placed assures victory, while 1 forces the corresponding roll. If the adventure die is revealed, refer to the app to discover the results. There are no event cards to deal, so that spot is missing, but there is a place to put the tokens to resolve the effects that appear in the app. There are mission cards, just like Robinson Crusoe, but First Martian also offers a campaign mode where the game status is carried over between missions. Players can develop skills, the hub can be modified or improved, and the story is told involving envelopes and even legacy elements. There's also morale, where the first player gains or loses morale tokens at the beginning of the turn, though First Martians also adds a stress mechanic where if this cube reaches 19, the entire crew each loses a wound, and the value is reset. On the surface, the game board is, well, a bit of a mess, meant obviously to convey the readouts in an overly complicated control board. These replace the various unbuilt inventions from the other game. In Robinson Crusoe, most missions involve an unbuilt camp on one side of the map, a camp that, when finally constructed, can be moved across as the island is explored. In First Martians, the hub is already constructed dead center of the map, though apparently built by Samsung given how unreliable it appears to be. However, given its static placement, it does make exploration difficult. Thankfully, regardless of player count, the game offers 2 rovers, one for various external activities, the other just for exploration. However, the process is identical, including the uncovering of points of interest and gathering resources. The weather dice have been replaced with malfunction dice, one for each of the blocks, working, system, and living. The app will have one randomly go up at the beginning of each turn, but the dice will inflict the most harm. If one reaches the highest value, it's reset to 0, and the corresponding malfunction card is revealed, inflicting various effects up to and including broken parts, which is when those candy-like green cubes are replaced by those reprehensible red cubes. I assume cinnamon. It's here where First Martian takes a significant tangent, increasing in complexity to a level Crusoe could only aspire to. Crusoe does force players to build a shelter, where First Martians only requires you to maintain it. You must embark on hunts where on Mars you have food supplies. You don't have to worry about snow or rain, but you do have to contend with power and oxygen. But then First Martians also add shutdown tiles, upgrade tiles, faculty tiles, research cards, direction cards, condition tokens, and campaign books. The high learning curve is the fault mostly of the manual, which fails to explain everything completely. The app helps your setup, but it lacks an easily accessible FAQ. The iconography is only explained at the back of the manual, with many of the game's more advanced options hiding within larger bodies of text. For example, the player aid explains that researching samples can add character skills, but at no point in the book does it explain that. It took 2 playthroughs, 2 passes of the manual, and Rodney's video before I fully grasped some of the minute details of the game. But in the end, I came to enjoy First Martians, more so than Robinson Crusoe. First Martians is also easier. Even after I read the rules to clarify mistakes made, we never lost a game. But even if you find it difficult, both Crusoe and Martians offers ways to mitigate that by including additional action tokens. Now, we mentioned with Crusoe it came in the form of Friday and the dog. With First Martians, they come in the form of robots. Well, these ones are actually useful. I had previously mentioned a campaign mode, which its sister game lacks. This allows not only the carrying over of resources and skills from previous ones, but the latter campaigns also include secret envelopes and legacy elements that can only be implemented once. Crusoe carries a more consistent theme with colored shaped tokens despite their peculiarity. Illustrations, even the action tokens carry stickers matching it to their characters. First Martian suffers from an admittedly fitting antiseptic presentation, not unlike the reality of what the situation would be, but it does suffer from an emotional disconnect to the content. Sure, the miniatures are awesome, but the overall presentation does force some disengagement from the material. Even those action tokens are presented as little more than flavored candy. And if playing multiple characters, it can get tricky to remember which characters is paired with which color. Other criticisms include some bugs within the app, along with its lacking certain guides and a strange lack of consequence if certain storage values reach 0. You run out of food, characters suffer wounds. Run out of stored power and oxygen, and well, nothing. And yet I like it. First Martians carries an awesome sci-fi theme that I appreciate more than hunting down banana fish and erecting exorcism crosses. I'm encouraged to play First Martians more so because of the included campaign guide and the concept of carrying over your base's configuration between missions. First Martians did itself no favors. Its obtuse board was exasperated by a muddled manual, and the app implementation received considerable knee-jerk reaction without a proper analysis as to why it was implemented. But the game is fun, especially when utilizing the campaign mode. It is more than just swapping out red cubes for green, which was basically the goal of the introductory game, necessary as it conveys the more complicated mechanics of the game, but a lethargic and boring and unengaging introduction, and barely an amuse-bouche to the cuisine to follow. First Martians is the Donnie Darko of board games. Initially confusing, but more rewarding with future plays. The more you dive in, the more context and substance you find. Perhaps 2001: A Space Odyssey would have been a better comparison. Darko is aging badly. Although not as bad as Robinson Crusoe on Mars. This is Chris from Dias Ex Machina.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.